What is up, you guys? The numbers are in for the August market recap for the Reno Sparks housing market. And as always, I am going to do a data deep dive and tell you exactly what's happening, what the numbers say. And of course, if you stay till the end, I will tell you exactly what this means for both buyers and sellers. So if you are in the middle of, or thinking of, or maybe down the line, long-term considering making a move in real estate, make sure you stay till the end because there's going to be a lot of valuable information once we get through what the numbers are. Before we get into all of that, let's talk about elephant in the room. If you are in the northern Nevada area or thinking about moving here, I don't think you can really talk about this area and the arts and culture scene without talking about Burning Man. What a week these people have had. I am going to touch on this not only because I talk about the northern Nevada lifestyle as part of my content here for you, but also because I am going to draw some parallels between that narrative and what is happening to actually what happens in our housing market with the media. So, if you aren't aware, the annual Burning Man event is a temporary city, and actually, when it is in full motion, it's the third largest city in our state. People go there for a week on average to experience art, culture, music, community, and all kinds of other things. This week, due to the weather, there was some unprecedented circumstances wherein it rained a lot of the week. It rained in the beginning and then again at the end. And the reason that I mainly want to touch on this is because the media has had a complete field day. Now, if you didn't know this about me, arts and culture are kind of my jam outside of real estate. It's a big part of the community that I connect with and serve here in Reno. So what I'm getting at is that the media has taken this story of this community out there and turned it into the craziest, most sensationalized headlines. If you weren't aware, which would really surprise me at this point, this is making top headlines on CNN, on Fox News, and also international news and media outlets are picking this story up, and the headlines I'm seeing are literally crazy. Ebola outbreaks, FEMA has infiltrated, Joe Biden has been made aware and is en route. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff. And the reason I bring this up is because this is exactly what they are doing and what they've always done for housing market news. So you've probably seen headlines in recent months that tell you the housing market is crashing, or don't buy a house, it's a terrible time, or if you bought a house in the last year, you're screwed because now it's crashing, so you made a bad investment, right? So my point is, turn all of that off and let's look at the actual numbers. I have them here in front of me and I'm going to dive in, but the numbers don't lie. The numbers have no ulterior motive to get you to click on them, right? They just are what they are. So enough about Burning Man. I'm going to move on to the actual housing market news for you. Okay, for the closeout of August, the median sales price in our market was $615,000. Now, this is actually up by 2.5% month over month from the closeout of July. It's also up 3.3% from a year ago. So despite what the headlines are telling you, housing prices are continuing to climb. It's not as drastic of a climb as we've seen in past months or years, but nonetheless, it's certainly not crashing as you may be led to believe. Number of closed sales was 299. This is also up 4.2% month over month from July. This number did come down just ever so slightly from a year ago by 3.9%. So, I mean, that's kind of a marginal difference, and given that it did come up from the previous month, I'd still say that's still a good sign of a healthy market, right? And I can tell you on the ground, I mean, I think I did more business this past August. I had more deals closed than I think I ever have in my entire real estate career. So, of course, some of that is seasonal. Summertime, we do always see an uptick in market activity, and I will say, to be honest with you, I do feel it kind of cooling down. That said, August was a really solid, busy month in our local market. All right, that leads me to the next metric, which is median days to contract. The number of days that it takes for a listing to go live to the day that it goes under contract with an accepted offer. That's what we're talking about here. That's your median days to contract. And for the closeout of August, this number was 17 days. This is actually down significantly month over month from July by 10.5%. That's a huge drop. That means that listings were moving a lot faster than they were the month before. That's a sign of a very hot market. And I can tell you, like I just said, I did experience that firsthand on the ground. Okay, this is where it gets crazy, you guys. This number is down by 48.5% from a year ago. That means that a year ago, houses were sitting on the market for twice as long before going under contract. Now, I think the reason why, and I could be wrong, but this is what I suspect, is that a year ago is around the time when these interest rates starting to climb was a really new thing. It had only been happening for maybe a couple of months, 3 to 4 months. So I think at that point, a lot of people were still in utter shock. And now, cut to a year later, they're still high and they're still continuing to climb. I think we've all kind of collectively adapted to the new normal, so to speak. And so that may be a reason why a lot of people are just kind of like acknowledging that that is what it is. It's not maybe going away anytime soon. And there are always going to be people who need to buy and sell because of life circumstances. And if you are tuning into me for the first time, I mean, I always say this, right? It's not really about timing the market. It's really about your unique situation and trying to navigate just life circumstances as best you can. The market's always going to be changing, and you'll always have an opportunity to refinance or pivot from decisions you've made, but you may not always have the option to pivot from a death in the family, a divorce, a move across the country or across the state or wherever for a job offer. These are things that are in some ways beyond our control, right? So that said, you can't always try to time the market. This next one's kind of interesting. The percent of list price received stayed exactly the same month over month from July, coming in at 98.8%. This is 0.6% higher than it was a year ago. So what that's telling you basically is that when a listing goes live on the market, that seller is receiving 98.8% of the price that they put on it. That's pretty healthy if you ask me. And you also have to take into account that this number is impacted by many factors, including who your agent is, what kind of research they've done, what kind of comps they've pulled. Pricing a listing can be a little bit tricky, especially with an ever-changing market that has been very turbulent for the past several months. You're going to want to make sure that your agent, whoever you hire to list your home, is not just looking at comps that sold several months ago, but very recently sold comps and also things that are pending or currently under contract. That's going to be your best barometer of how to price a listing. And obviously, when things are under contract, you can't just see on the MLS exactly what the accepted offer price was. So if your agent is, really doing their due diligence and their work when they're researching the appropriate price for your listing, make sure that they're calling the agent who represented these sales that are under contract and see if they can price. I mean, they don't have to and they won't always disclose, but if they can get an answer of like, hey, I saw that your listing at 123 Main Street is under contract. Would you mind sharing with me the accepted offer price so that I can adequately price my listing that's in the same neighborhood? I think a lot of agents would share that information because I don't think that it really impacts the best interest of their client, which, if you didn't know, that is our fiduciary responsibility. It's to always act in the best interest of our clients. Median sold price per square foot did increase ever so slightly. It is up to $326 per square foot. This is 0.6% higher than it was at the closeout of last month and 1.6% higher than it was a year ago. So really, we're not seeing very drastic changes in pricing. This is just another metric that kind of gives you insight into that. Number of new listings did increase. It was somewhat significant. We had 390 new listings come online this past month. That is an increase of 8.9%. That's kind of a big number. I think with the interest rates being higher, with prices continuing to climb, it is kind of allowing this scarcity issue that we've had for a number of years, and we still do have, allowing it to kind of catch up with itself. I will say the number of new listings did decrease though from a year ago by 2.5%. So, sometimes like overall a linear line is gonna look like it's climbing, but like if you look like zoom in and look at like the micro shifts, it's like little lines that are kind of waving and going up. So I wouldn't necessarily say that we should make a lot of judgments based on this number, but stay with me because as I move along, I am going to talk more about the inventory as we get down to the month's supply of inventory. While we're on the topic, active inventory also increased up to 601, which is an increase of 5.4% from the closeout of July. This is actually a huge drop year over year from last year at this time, a 36.3% decrease in active inventory. So last year at this time, I think the market was also extremely challenging for buyers and sellers. There was a lot more scarcity than there is now. So that is something to keep in mind. And what that does is it gives buyers more leverage than it does sellers, right? Because when sellers have a lot of other listings to be competing with that have more or less, it's like selling the same product in a store next door, you have to make more concessions to the people buying it, right? And we'll get into some of that, so stay with me. Okay. Month's supply of inventory has officially reached 2 months, which it's still like not a lot, right? That still speaks to a huge scarcity. They do say that in a perfectly balanced market, you see about 6 months of inventory. So we're still a long ways off from that. But that being said, I mean, I remember back in COVID times when the month's supply of inventory was a fraction, right? Like things were flying off the shelf so fast you couldn't keep up with it. Now we're at 2 whole months of supply, which is an increase of 1.2% from the previous month. Not a huge climb, but still significant that we're now seeing a 2 in the front of this number. And here's where it gets crazy. It's a 33.7% decrease from last year. So that's telling us that there is less inventory now than there was a year ago. As I mentioned earlier in this video, a year ago, we were all kind of collectively recovering from the shock of the interest rates rising at a really drastic pace. Now they're up there, they've been up, they've come slightly down into the 5s, now they're back up into the 7s, but like overall it's been more than a year of this drastic increase from what we were seeing in the 1, 2, 3% range during COVID. I think we've all kind of accepted that this is the new normal, at least for now. Of course, we're all hopeful that these will come down. In a healthy economy, the average interest rate for mortgages is around 4%. So we are higher than that. Obviously, we're dealing with inflation. We're dealing with a lot of economic factors at play here. And we are hopeful that this number is going to come down. But for the time being, I think we've all kind of made the adequate mental adjustment that this is kind of where we are at. So, as promised, I always do deliver you guys a summary of what this means for both buyers and sellers. So if you've watched this long, I'm sure that's what you're waiting for. Thank you for your patience. Overall, what I'm kind of taking from these numbers, and of course, my opinion is just an opinion. That said, it is an educated opinion by a realtor who works every day in this market. But what I'm kind of seeing here from these numbers is that this is kind of looking like a pretty balanced market. Now, some people who say, well, 6 months of inventory is balanced, like, yeah, I hear that argument and that's true, but there's a lot of numbers here at play. And one of them is the median price, right? Like it continues to climb. That's good news for sellers. Also, on the side of sellers, 98.8% of list price received is really healthy. If you adequately price your listing and put it out there, you're probably going to get pretty dang close to what you're asking. That's good news for sellers. If you're thinking about selling or if you already have your home on the market, that the amount of inventory has increased significantly. So that means that there are lots of other people who are selling right now that you're competing with. That might mean that buyers have a lot more choices. That might mean that you have to prepare to make some concessions. This time of year, we always do tend to see a bit of a cooling off. So with that, you're going to have less buyers in general who are coming forward in the market. You're going to have to kind of be prepared to give more to those buyers who are still trying to play ball with you. One thing that doesn't really align with everything I've just said, though, is the median days to contract, right? So that steep decrease of 10.5% is very significant. That means that properties at the closeout of August were just flying off the shelves. I do have to say, I think that is seasonal. I do think and predict that at the closeout of September, we will see an increase in that number. Don't hold me to it. This is just a prediction. I don't have a crystal ball, but I do kind of suspect that with the cooling of the weather, the cooling of the market, the seasonal kind of rhythm that our market and every market kind of experiences, we will see a bit of a cooling off. So if you are a seller or you're thinking about becoming one, my best advice to you would be to kind of mentally prepare for making some concessions with buyers. You don't really have the upper hand at this point in time. And also to just really make sure that whoever you have listing your house and representing you in the sale of that home, not mentioning any names, make sure that you ask questions about how they pull comps. Make sure that you are informed and make sure that you feel comfortable that they know how to adequately price your home. And what I'm talking about here is just making sure that the comps that they're pulling are not just recently sold. You want to have them dig into the pending sales. I've actually been saying this for months. So if you've been watching these updates every month, you've heard me say this before, right? But it blows my mind how many agents don't know how to actually price a listing. And before I let my buyers make offers on homes, I always run my own comps because I don't want people to overpay for something that, they really shouldn't be. And it's wild to me how many agents in our market don't know how to do that kind of research. So just make sure that you feel super confident that your agent is doing that for you. If you are a buyer in today's market, my advice to you is to be prepared to pay as close to fair market value as possible, right? The price tag is going up on most listings. That said, I think that it is appropriate for you or your agent, whoever's representing you in this transaction, hopefully me, but have that person ask for other concessions, right? You can ask for bigger repair credits. You can ask for flexibility on timeline. Be prepared to pay a solid price. Be prepared to pay close to what the listing price is, though make sure your agent is doing adequate research and running comps before you put a number on paper in your offer. Just be open to negotiating. And I think this goes for both sides, right? I think this market is coming closer into balance, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It was a really hot seller's market for a long, long time. And then when rates went up, it went really far into the opposite direction. I think we're kind of like ping-ponging, but right now we're kind of in this place of very close to being in somewhat of a balanced market, which I think is healthy. Maybe that's a sign that we're going to end up in a healthier market soon, though the rates are continuing to climb. That's a whole other conversation. That said, if you are a buyer or you're thinking about becoming one, the rates are high. You're going to get a lot less house or property than you were several months ago because your monthly payments can be higher because you're paying higher interest. So for you, if that's okay, or you have a life circumstance where you have to make a move right now, that's fine. Just remember that you can usually, I'm not going to say always because I don't want to lie to you, but like in a lot of cases, you can refinance later on. You can also upgrade, buy the house that you can afford right now, get in, start building equity, start kind of getting into the game. And then when the market changes or improves, or after a couple of years, go ahead and rent that out. Use the cash flow to help fund the purchase of a bigger, better home, or sell that home and use the proceeds to do the same thing. That's an option. Or, I'm not here to pressure you. If you are thinking now is not the ideal time to buy, that is fine. Make sure that you're doing all the things that are going to help position you to be a stronger buyer in the future. And that means cleaning up your credit, maybe connecting with a credit repair person. That means maybe trying to up your income. Don't change jobs unless buying is like a very long-term thing that's like way in the distant horizon. But maybe think about how to make more income and think about how to put more of it away for a bigger down payment. All of these things are going to help to position you to be a stronger buyer when the time is right. All right, you guys, that was a lot of info. If you have questions or if you want to know more about the market or anything related to buying and selling property in our area, you can book a free call with me. There's a link to do that in the description box below. I'll help you devise the next and best steps to put together a winning strategy for you in our market. And hey, if you haven't already, I would super duper appreciate it if you would just hit that like and that subscribe button. I put out new videos every single week about the Reno Sparks market, the Northern Nevada lifestyle, and of course, all things related to buying and selling real estate. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.